All right, welcome everybody. My name is Amanda Luke, and I am the Open Access Librarian at Washburn University's Mabee Library, and I have the privilege of working with an amazing community of faculty, staff, and students, helping with their open access and open educational needs. And then we have my co-presenter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Gibson, Director of Learning Technologies at Emporia State. I serve on the Open Educational Resource Steering Committee that we have on campus. I'm also a Creative Commons certified educator and facilitator. I'm actually conducting a Creative Commons session right now for a group of librarians. And I'm one of the Open Educational Network trainers. Welcome.
All right, so thank you for joining our session. I'm going to give a brief overview of what we'll talk about today, but while we're doing that, if you'd like, we have a little trivia poll on Mentimeter. If you want to participate, you can go ahead and scan the QR code or on your phone or visit menti.com and put in the code you see at the bottom. All right, so this presentation is going to briefly discuss 8 areas related to developing an OER program. We're going to take a look at advocacy, programming and promotion, funding and sustainability, student involvement, maintaining and indexing OER development, grants and incentives, and then we're going to have a little bit of time for discussion. We have also provided references to help you put some of these things into action later. So we've provided those references at the end of the PowerPoint slide, which is posted on the event website. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes to go ahead and participate in the Menti, and then I'm going to switch over and see what we've got. Go over. Excellent. So
okay. Never mind, I didn't get my code in fast enough.
Oh no. You can keep
Got it.
Yeah, you can add the codes listed at the top of the slide here, 712-6745, if you would like to participate. And the question is, which beloved children's book entered the public domain this year? Give everybody a minute to contribute if they want to. All right, I have not seen the numbers change here for a second. So the answer is Winnie the Pooh entered the public domain this year. It was first published in 1926, and on Public Domain Day this year, January 1st, it entered the public domain, but every title on this list is in the public domain currently. So these can all be found online. I was able to find all of these on Project Gutenberg, available for free. So it's a fun little poll to get us started. And the great thing about these things being in the public domain is that they fall under the definition of OER, because you can do the 5 R's, revise, remix, retain, redistribute, and reuse them in any way, thanks to this public domain status. All right, so let's go ahead and switch back over. If you want to keep your Menti open, actually, I meant to mention this. If you want to keep your Menti open, we are going to be doing another poll a little bit later in the presentation. So go ahead and keep your Menti open if you want to participate in that. All right. All right, so first we're going to speak about advocacy. And I am going to talk about this really quickly, do an overview of it. Advocacy is a core piece of any OER program, and one that is going to remain at the forefront of your program's plans and goals. And so advocacy is going to tie into this presentation, and each part of this presentation, each piece that we speak about in some way. And so I'd ask that you keep advocacy in mind as we move throughout the presentation. And so with advocacy, it's just moving beyond that support role and into the role of an advocate building an OER program, and that takes time and planning. As you begin thinking about advocacy at your institution when you're building this program, think about creating a strategic plan for the program. And strategic planning can help you to act now and plan for ways to accomplish your larger goals in the future. The bullet points on this slide provide a broad outline for writing a strategic plan for your OER program. You, your working group, or as we'll talk about in a minute, an OER committee can consider where your campus currently is regarding OER, and if necessary, think about how you're going to make that determination. So what Washburn did for this is in 2017, we did a campus-wide survey of faculty with the goal of gauging how much they knew about or interacted with OER. The results of the survey helped us to determine that more faculty training and incentives were needed at that time. And that was really helpful to us. One resource, Maynard and Anderson did a presentation in 2019, Begin an OER Strategic Plan, and it suggests thinking through aspects of organizational structure, culture, and communication as you're forming your plan. They also suggest aligning the OER strategic plan with existing institutional missions and values, as well as conducting SWOT and stakeholder analyses. So conducting a SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and stakeholder analysis can help you think through who your potential advocates are and what obstacles you may encounter along the way. The Open Education Network's Open Canva course on OER librarianship offers a lot of really helpful advice in this area, and they do have a good module in there on how to complete a SWOT analysis for an OER program. Okay. So in addition to another piece of the advocacy is gathering help. So when you're doing this, gather help from many different areas of your institution into maybe a working group or a committee that's going to help you achieve your program's goals and bring different voices and perspectives into the program. Consider including library staff, faculty from a variety of disciplines, department chairs, deans, administrative staff, technology staff, bookstore staff, student government, and anybody else you think is going to help support you in this program. Washburn has an OER committee, and I am one of the members of that committee, and then the K-Board task force. The Dean of Libraries is also another member of that committee, and then we have academic affairs members and faculty from across the institution who convene on that committee, and we have been able to get some really cool stuff done that way. Okay. So next, and another part of advocacy that you'll be working on, when you're developing your OER program is promotion and programming. Promoting OER is going to require a variety of approaches. You may find that you have both formal and informal opportunities to promote OER. We're going to talk more about formal events here in a second. But when you begin promoting OER, consider creating informational web pages and guides that connect your community not only to information about OER, but to you and your advocacy team. And another piece of advice I found really helpful was working on what they call the elevator pitch, a short introduction to OER and the program, and being able to talk very quickly about the benefits of OER. With an individual or in a community, Lumen Learning's OER Champion Playbook offers some really great advice on creating an elevator pitch for OER. And then when you have that elevator pitch, you'll be able to, when you have those serendipitous meetings, maybe in department meetings or committee meetings, or just walking around campus, you'll be ready to discuss OER with anybody. And I love that librarians in particular, I think we have a really unique opportunity to do this because we often encounter a large cross-section of our campus communities daily. Okay, lastly, for promotion, consider creating a marketing plan and think about how you're going to get the word out about OER and your events that you are going to think about doing. And then who do you need to work with to get the word out for programming in your community? Next, related to this is the actual programming. So programming and events can help you to advocate for OER, teach your community about OER. When you're planning events, consider your program goals and who you want to attend the event and what you want them to leave with. How does this event help you to fulfill the program mission? And so the American Library Association has a public programs office, and they have a blog called Programming Librarian. And I really like this blog. It offers some great tips and ideas as well as advice on that can translate really well to OER programming on campus. Consider working, I'm sorry.
Amanda, we have a question, and
Yes.
I think it's pretty pertinent right now. So
Awesome.
sorry to interrupt, but
No.
Scott Cohen asked, who has a good guide to SWOT analysis for OER? I didn't catch what was said.
Okay. Let me go back to my notes here. The Open Education Network has a certificate in OER librarianship. And they have an open Canva, it's like a course, an open course on Canva for OER librarianship. And one of the modules in there is module 5.2. And they have an activity that can help walk you through completing a SWOT analysis for an OER program. And I worked through this and I thought it was awesome. It provides questions that you can ask about your program as well.
All right, and we now have a link to that. Thank you, Rob.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Okay, so one of the ways that Washburn has done programming and events in this area is we worked with our professional development office, CTEL, the Center for Teaching Excellence in Learning, to do training workshops and information sessions and working groups, working directly with faculty, educating them about OER and helping them to use and implement OER into their courses. Other things that we've done are work with student groups, the student government, and then we have a club, the Student Friends of Navy Library, who have helped us to do events geared towards the student body in that area. So one of the things I thought would be fun to do in the session is to see what the community's ideas are. So let's see if I can get this to, here we go. So the second page on the poll, and I need to get it open here, is asking you to share ideas. There we go. Share your programming ideas or ideas that you've tried that have worked really well. Maybe ideas that you think would be fun to try for promoting OER or training faculty or students with OER. So if you'd like, go ahead and open that poll and you can contribute your ideas. Oh, that's cool. So like a 3-month training course. That's interesting. I really like that idea. Ooh. So I'm saying PD for professional development. Professional development for departments, utilizing professional development funds for incentives such as stipends, perhaps. Awesome. And then the textbook broke informal survey. Washburn did something like that. We asked students, we put out sticky notes on a whiteboard and asked students, how much did you pay for textbooks? We got a lot of really cool feedback on that. Awesome. So I really like the idea of getting students directly involved in this. I mean, I hope that everyone in the session today was able to talk about, hear our opening talk from the student body president at Fort Hays. He had a lot of really great things to say about the benefits of OER for students. Awesome. All right, everybody. Let's get back here. We need to keep going. You can keep contributing those ideas and as you think of them, and we'll look at them again later. All right, so for funding and sustainability, this is one thing that a lot of OER programs really have to consider carefully. And the programs do require funding for support staff and events and incentive programs and technology, amongst other things, right? So creating an OER program consider creating a budget when you are working on this, and address both your short and long-term goals. If your institution staff's a grant writer, consider meeting with them to discuss internal and external grant opportunities that align with your program. Utilize existing tools such as the SUNY, the State University of New York OER Field Guide for Sustainability Planning. And so what Washburn did was they hired an open access librarian, that's me, and then we were able to raise funds through our foundation. And those funds we have been able to use to do an incentive program for our faculty through a grant program. And then I think I'm going to hand it over to Rob now to talk about what Emporia is doing with funding and sustainability.
Great, quick audio check. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to stop sharing, Rob, so
okay.
that you can start sharing. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
Give me just a minute, folks, to switch gears here. I'm going to leave this kind of in non-presentation mode if it's okay, because I'm going to be showing some websites here in just a minute, so I might as well not be in full presentation mode. So if you'll bear with me, is that okay, Amanda? Does that look okay?
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, great. I apologize about not being in full presentation mode, but so Amanda talked a little bit about student involvement, and this is really a critical part of, I think, your efforts. She mentioned it a couple of times, and I just wanted to circle back and really tell you how important it is to involve your students, in particular your Student Government Association, as you start to invest in this effort and roll out these types of programs. We started talking with our Student Government Association about 3 years ago. I mean, OER has been around, but it was sort of new to us at that time. And so we were in discussions with them and went to some of their meetings and talked about it and presented on it. It was sort of surprising, actually. I don't know if the rest of you can share this experience, but a lot of our students, certainly at the time, really didn't have a strong awareness of open educational resources. In fact, our faculty didn't either, for that matter. This was one of those things that was a bit nebulous. They tended to conflate open educational resources with things like e-text, like, well, I'm using a Pearson book, so yeah, I know what OER is, I'm using it, and it's really not the same thing, of course. So there was some confusion about that. And so we tried to sort of cut out some of that noise about what is exactly open educational resources and why it's important to their future and so forth. Interestingly, the student government associations about that time, this is about 2 years ago now, across the state, I think most of them all sort of banded together and drafted a resolution that they submitted. I'm not sure if it was to the state legislature or to KBOR. I'm not sure how far that went, but I have to go back and revisit that. But basically, the students were saying in the student voice that you need to start advocating for more open educational resources and reduce the cost of instruction, that sort of thing. So it was maybe from a cost benefit perspective, but not looking at some of the other affordances that open provides, but nevertheless, I mean, that's the bottom line, is they're looking at cost savings. I know from a personal perspective, I teach in a graduate program, and I'm a staunch advocate for OER. I use it for everything I do. I never buy a textbook anymore. I never have them buy a textbook. And even if you can save them $40, which doesn't seem like it's that much, right? They're like, oh, thank you. You're just like, oh, see, anything you can save them, they're going to be just over the moon about. So those types of cost savings add up. They want to have that type of savings. So as Amanda indicated, sort of trailing on what she was saying, is to discuss these initiatives with your student body, your student government association, because they're kind of the voice, right? So they sort of carry that message forward. Promote the benefits to them for doing this, not only just the cost savings, but all of the other affordances as well. Like one of them that comes to mind here, and I'm an accessibility advocate as well, a staunch accessibility advocate. And when things are in sort of in the open domain, arguably they're already in a digital format. Not always, but most of the time they are. And so most of the time they're in a format that's easily either converted or is already in an accessible format. My favorite story of this actually is there was a business student that came to us, and he had a visual impairment, and his class was using analog books, right, to regular textbooks. And we had to scan all of them, 5 textbooks. We had to scan all of them before his classes got started, so he could access all of them. So that's just sort of one little nugget of how open resources can benefit students even really before they get started. And then include them in open educational resources. There's a kind of a number footnote thing there at the tail end of this presentation, which we will provide to you later, is a great link to it inside higher education article about that very thing. So, Amanda, is there anything you want to chime in on that I missed that you want to talk about? Okay. So the next thing we want to talk about briefly here is you have to provide some sort of a platform or a format for your faculty to begin to develop content. Now, ironically, we just submitted a large Spark grant, it was like yesterday, to help, hopefully, if we're awarded that grant, that will help to pay for some of the development and the resources like this tool. I'm a big staunch advocate of Pressbooks. I like Pressbooks, but it's not the only kid on the block. There's also Inkling is another very popular tool as well. But you have to provide the faculty some sort of a platform or a format. Hopefully, have some commonality, have a thread of commonality in whatever tool or platform that you select. The problem that I see right now, and it's nobody's fault, just the fact that we don't have a tool like this, is that, well, you can get a free Pressbooks account, but that's got some limitations. Is that people are developing in all manner of different sorts of formats and things and whatnot, and what I'm afraid is happening is that content is never seeing the light of day. It is developed, it's put onto some drive or put in Canvas or whatever, and it's nobody ever sees it again. Maybe some students see it in that class, but it's never shared beyond that because it's really not in an exportable format. It's not in a format that's transportable. So you have to have something that can traverse across different platforms, go into Canvas, but can also go into a library indice and any manner of different sorts of formats wherever you might want to host that. And then also to have it available in different form factors. So small form factor, large form factor, whatever the case might be. And Pressbooks and Inkling both provide for that sort of granularity and that flexibility. And of course, the editability of that. So you want to be able to go in and alter and change and adapt and add new resources, make it a living document as much as possible. So again, this is something I think that you really need to, as you roll out programs on your campus, this is something that's absolutely imperative to have that type of resource at your avail. The next thing is okay, so you got the press books or whatever, inkling, and you're developing content. Where do you put it, right? So you have to have some sort of a platform to do that. Now we had our Open Educational Committee had a committee which looked at hosting options and hosting platforms, and the one that they arrived at, which I agree with totally, is a product called bpress. I noticed that K-State's using bpress as well, under a different moniker. Prairie, after, maybe somebody can help me out with that. But when I dug into it a little bit, it was a bpress engine behind it. But you have to have some sort of an open hosting platform. They're not inexpensive, I mean, it's a typical cloud-based index is probably going to be, in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $40,000 a year kind of thing to have that. But you have to have some kind of an engine hosting platform to be able to put your content into. So not only can other faculty find it, but students can also find it easily as well. And you also, of course, have to have that be available in Canvas. I was watching a presentation from Emily at K-State yesterday, and she was mentioning that if you happen to use Canvas, others, you have the same thing, but have the new LTI, the 1.3 LTI, which allows for more seamless ingestion of content from some of these providers. Any OpenStax and others can now ingest pretty seamlessly directly into Canvas. Libre does that as well. You have to make the content discoverable. That's the big thing. I told you that it goes into these dark closets and never comes out again. You never see it because it's not discoverable. People can't find that material, and then hence it's not very open when you do that. Then of course that allows you to promote the availability of that content to faculty because they can actually then search on that. You can also link to metacrawlers. My favorite is there's many metacrawlers, but one of my favorites is George Mason has one called the Bomb Metacrawler, which cross searches somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15 different indices. So you can actually link into those types of indexes and then have your content be discoverable by other people who are not even necessarily associated with your institution, and be able to share that in the Open Educational Network. I'm hoping that at some point the state of Kansas will have some sort of a statewide index where we can hook into that and be able to have that shareable across our institutions in the state. Other states have something like that. We're just, I think, a little bit behind in that area. And then you have to be able to connect to the SIS. Now I'm going to come back to this one in just a minute, and I'm going to ask Amanda to chime in, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of a lead in, and I'm going to bail, and I'm going to go into a website here in just a minute. But you have to have a way to promote your resource through your student information system. Now we do this, but I think actually Washburn does it much better. There's, I think, a more mature model where they are actually denoting in the course schedule inside their SIS, they're a banner school like we are, through an attribute in banner that is an open educational resource. She's going to talk more about that, but they actually have a little indicator. So the students are registering for classes, they can actually see, that is an open educational resource. By the way, I thought I would mention real quickly too, before it escapes me, that we have just recently implemented, and this was passed by our Student Government Association, a $10 per student per year fee to help support this. That's going to generate somewhere in the neighborhood of about $50,000 a year, and that's going to kind of sort of pour that back into the support of some of these resources and tools. I'm kind of keeping a mindful eye on the clock here. My last formal slide before I show you a couple of websites is grants and incentives, and Amanda mentioned some of this as well. You have to have some sort of seed funding to get some lift on your campus. Now we're in our third year of our program, and we are still funding that effort centrally, but we have an eye toward making this self-supporting through that student fee. Your provost typically doesn't have a bucket of money under the desk that they could just bail out when you need it. So they really have to become self-sustaining programs at some point. So you'll need seed money to get started. Once you start to get some traction, then you can think about having that be more of a self-sustaining effort that you have on your campus. Our particular process, somebody mentioned in the chat, we have a fairly rigorous selection criteria process. We have a committee that looks at all of our app. We have an application process. And by the way, we borrowed the application format from KU. They're pretty gracious about sharing. They have a really nice page that has all the criteria, that sort of thing on it. You choose whether it's an adapt, adopt, or create that you're going after. And there's different grant levels. There's several other people who have talked about grants in this couple of days here. But we have a fairly rigorous process. We have a spreadsheet where we look on return on investment. We look at all of the enrollment. We look at 5 years previous enrollment. We look at current enrollment. We look at the textbook cost. We call it a bookstore. We get all of this mathematical criteria. We sort of pull it together in a business sense, and we look at the ROI. And ROI, is basically if you're north of 1, the number 1, it's a positive ROI. If you're south of 1, then it's not a positive ROI. We give preference to our gen ed courses just by virtue of the fact that they impact more students, and they impact more students who are disadvantaged. So we are trying to provide preference, even if it's a sub 1 ROI. If it's a gen ed course, it gets preferential treatment. It starts to get a little thinner as you get into the graduate school. We have an accelerated program for our education and business school, which impact a lot of students. Those are large enrolling classes. And so we give preference to those as well, just by virtue of the fact that they have huge enrollment. We want to try and leverage that as much as possible. And having something that's in that portable format, that OER, where they don't have to buy a book because those are accelerated. One class starts on a Monday, the last one ended on a Friday. You have a weekend in between. You can't order a book because by the time the book gets there, the class is over. All that stuff. So having it in OER in a transportable format just makes a lot of sense. The student fee thing I mentioned, we are also starting trying to start a badging program as well. And I'm going to show you an example of another place is doing a badging program. We haven't gotten a lot of traction yet. I'm still working on that, but we want to award faculty some sort of an indicator that they can put into their Canvas course or their tenure and promotion materials, or any number of different areas where they can show that they are they've gotten one of these adapt, adopt, or create grants and are working on that. So it sort of hopefully counts toward their TNP. And then of course enlist faculty as advocates as well. I'm going to stop share for just a moment, and I'm kind of keeping an eye here. We've still got some time. Amanda, you just virtually slap me if I go over time here. Let me hop out to show a couple of websites here. Yeah, that's not what I wanted to show. That just happened to be up there when I was sharing that. Let me close that down real quick. Amanda, I'm gonna lean on you on this. So this is Washburn's Zero textbook, at how they hook into their SIS, and I'm going to scroll and you take it away.
Okay, so yes, we took a book, a page out of KU and K-State's book, and decided to jump all in with an icon in our course catalog that indicates when a course has zero textbook costs. And so what that means is that as students, and if you scroll down a little bit, Rob, you'd be able to see an example of what it will look like. When students are enrolling for classes, they will be able to see this icon, and it will indicate to them that they will not have to make a purchase of primary course materials for the class. This icon and the zero textbook cost program that we are starting does not include lab materials. So we are working right now, very currently, on training our faculty and staff on not only how to indicate in banner that their course is zero textbook cost, but how to help students to understand what it means, what is zero textbook and what is not. And so this is going to help students plan for their course costs as they are enrolling. So hopefully we should start seeing this in action in the fall, this fall 22. So.
Thank you. So I'm going to switch tabs here. I mentioned the badging program. I'm going to kind of toggle back and forth. By the way, this is not intended to, I'm not telling you about politics, any of this, but this happens to be Florida's initiative. It's important. I'm not going to get into all of that ugly stuff about Florida politics right now, but there was a bill passed recently called, this is the HB 847. This is the Post-Secondary Academic Library Network. Basically, Florida has been pretty ambitious and aggressive in actually developing a statewide initiative. So they've hooked all of their public institutions into this large, among other things, they're sharing online courses and other things as well. But one of them that's germane to this conversation today is that they're creating this large library network. And along those same lines, they are going to have all of the open educational resources surface through this large index that they are developing down there. This is a pretty ambitious effort, frankly. Cost savings, I'm sure, is at the heart of this, as you probably know, but nevertheless, it's something that maybe Kansas will get to at some point, where there's sort of a large umbrella across all of our institutions. I don't know what the positives and negatives of that are just yet, but I just wanted to share that. And as part of that, this is what some of the institutions are doing there. This is called the Affordability Counts. This is an effort by those same institutions.
Just a 3-minute warning, Rob.
Okay, to surface what's happening with respect to some of their courses and programs. You can view awarded courses. Let's see if it's going to open this up. May not do that here now that I'm trying to share. It's thinking about it. Each of the institutions actually are listed here in a large database. They're coming now. You can see this is University of Central Florida, the course, the instructor. This is the badge that they have developed over on the right-hand side. You can dig into each of these. You can expand each of these to get more information about that particular course and that particular book that they've developed. And then this badge carries along with that. They can celebrate that on websites in their course, their LMS or whatever the case might be. So this is all kind of part and parcel of that large effort in Florida to centralize all of that and to use this badging algorithm to promote that effort. So I'm gonna stop sharing now. That was all I wanted to share. I think wait a minute, hang on, we've got some questions. Oh, wait a minute, one more thing real quick. This is just, yeah, you know what, I think, Amanda, we're going to skip the last one. We'll just go to discussions. We don't have enough time for that Padlet. So why don't we just open it up to discussions in the last couple of minutes?
I always thought that OER was, and I'm learning from the Kansas Summit that OER is not what I thought. I thought it was going out and finding open textbooks, using them, getting content to put in your online learning management system as your modules. I had no idea that people were developing all books, which looks so labor intensive, but they're wonderful. But could not OER be something where people don't spend any money? I mean, we don't have any money. So what do you say about that? Just using existing materials. Is that part of OER?
Absolutely is. Yeah, Amanda may talk about this too, but OER is free. That's the whole point, is it doesn't, there's a bit of a debate about that. I talked to the guy who runs OpenStax, who started OpenStax, and we had a little bit of a conversation about it. I said, isn't OER free? Isn't it low cost too? I mean, isn't there a no cost, low cost sort of thing about that? And he thought there was. He thought it could be a low cost situation. I think many on this call and this conference will probably argue that it's free, though. The open education resource is by nature is inherently free. Amanda, would you agree with that?
So yes, there is an ongoing debate about the sustainability of OER programs, and I would say that there is at some point there is a cost involved, because it is free for our end users and our students who are accessing these materials, and it creates better access and more equitable access for students across the board. One of our faculty members who completed our grant program said their favorite thing about it was that students had first day access and perpetual access, and they really liked that. And it didn't have a cost for them, but there is a cost. If you think about it, there's a cost in creating materials. There's a cost in faculty time. And so those are all things that have to be taken into consideration when you're starting a program. Yes, there are costs involved sometimes on the back end that need to be thought about and thought through as you're developing a program. And we do have a couple questions here in chat. There was a question: what other external grants are available besides the SPARK grant? And I do know that I have heard of the IMLS organization having grants for libraries that are in this area. The Hewlett Foundation, you may have heard of, they are big into the OER sphere. Microsoft, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation helps with OER as well. There was one I saw when I was doing research a few weeks ago, and I cannot remember what it is, but it's an international grant program for open education.
I wanted to circle back real quick about the cost. If you put something, if you have to have a library index to access that material, it may be free for your student because they're paying, that through their tuition or what have you, or other revenue stream. But it's not open. You can't take that and reshare that necessarily. Not always, but most of the time you can't reshare that. So hence, it's really not technically free as in being able to share that resource wherever, because the students are paying for that. So free with an asterisk by it, maybe.
And
Okay, we have come to the end of our time. Thank you all for being great participants, and for our speakers for doing a wonderful job. We all learned so much. I think you all have access to these speakers' contact information. If you have any more questions, I'm sure they'd be happy to help you with those things. So thank you all. Have a great day.
thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.